Welcome everybody. I'm, as you all file in or get admitted in by Carolyn, we'll get started because Chief McNeil has some obligations that will sort of truncate his time here with us. So I'm going to try to get started. But I would like to at least have an opportunity to sort of go around the room, so to speak, and introduce yourselves. And then I will introduce Chief McNeil. So if you could just, I guess we'll start with on my screen. I have like, let's see, I have Carolyn is up. So I'll start with you, Carolyn, and we can just say where we are, what your name is, and where you are.
All right, my name is Carolyn Speakman, and I am currently at work at the South Dakota Humanities Council in Brookings, South Dakota.
Okay, Ryan.
I'm Ryan Woodard. I helped create this program with Lawrence, and I'm in Sioux Falls. And I would like to thank Chief McNeil for taking his time to appear on this. We really appreciate that. So,
okay, Thea.
Good morning. I'm Thea Miller Ryan. I'm with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute in part of USD in Sioux Falls.
Naima.
Yes, I'm here in where am I? I am in Elkton, and I'm here to get into some good trouble.
Yeah.
Kendra?
I'm Kendra Brookhausen, and I'm also currently at work at the Humanities Council in Brookings.
Okay. Jennifer?
Hi, I am also in Brookings. I'm also sort of at work, but not in the office. I'm on my front porch, which is why I'm a little backlit, but it's a gorgeous morning, so.
Good. Phyllis?
Phyllis Coldeye in Brookings, South Dakota.
Deb?
Hi, Deb Delaney. I am on staff at SDHC, and I am on my front porch too, but anything like yours, Jennifer.
Haley?
Hi, I'm at work at the Humanities Council as well, but I'm actually in my bedroom.
Right.
Dave Erickson?
Yeah, I'm Dave Erickson with the Brookings Police Department here in Brookings, and Deb invited me to join the meeting today, so pleasure to be here.
Oh, great, great. Glad to have you. Barb? Are you there, Barbara?
Yes, I am. I had to unmute my mic. I'm in Aberdeen. I'm a humanities scholar, and I'm presently in rehab, but doing really well, and hope to be out of here in a couple of weeks and away from this bingo game. Which I hope you can hear in the background today.
Well, I'm glad you, Barbara, I'm glad you gave us and Chief Nelson a heads up so he can get extra officers out in a couple of weeks.
Okay, yeah, they need to kind of spring me from this place. Thanks, Lawrence. I'm going to mute my mic again.
Sure. I guess it's Novotny.
And I don't know if you're seeing
He said in the chat that he doesn't have a working mic.
Oh, okay. All right.
Lawrence Novotny in Brookings, and he's just listening in today.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll get started. Our guest today is Chief Dave McNeil, and he's the chief of police at the in Aberdeen. And so I came to know him through some work we were doing on the diversity committee in Aberdeen. And I remember the first time I met him, he had put out a call to anybody who wanted to like just come and meet with the police department at a McDonald's. And I thought, well, that's different, you know? Who is this guy? You know, because I didn't grow up with police ever doing anything like that, like at least not in our community, they never did. So I went out and I was pleasantly surprised that he was an open person, easy to talk to. And so since that time, he's been like on my radar. And so we've been sort of tossing around ideas. So there's a lot of things I think you'll learn, but rather than me tell you, I will open up the conversation and welcome, Dave. And I'm so glad that you could be here with us. I'd like to start off by asking you, what are the kinds of things that you would think that the public kind of doesn't know about, let's say, best case scenario of being a police officer? I know that's a big question, but I thought we'd start off with something broad like that. Like, what if you had three things that you would like the public to know about being a police officer? What would those three things be?
All right. Well, thank you very much all for having this format. I greatly appreciate it. And I also want to recognize Dave Erickson from the Brookings Police Department, who's a colleague of mine, and we work on a lot of issues. And I greatly apologize that I do have to leave at 10:30, but where I leave off, Dave can also help. And thank you so much for that question. So again, you know, it's the essence of why people become public servants. Why do people want to enter the policing profession? Why do they, you know, why do they seek this job? And I think it's really the heart of service, you know, being involved in the community and having a heart to serve, making a difference in that community, and being part of problem solving, coming up with solutions, resolving conflict, and just taking pride in that overall sense of community and being part of that. So there's a heart of service and a passion to work with people, and the challenges of solving sometimes complex problems, you know, and being part of that. There's really self-satisfaction in helping people. And again, it goes back to just helping people and being in a position where you can apply your skills, your heart of service to those in need, you know, those people that have their worst day. How can you come and help their life and improve that and make a difference? So there's so many aspects and components of policing. And, you know, a lot of the things that you experience in policing, you know, sometimes are, you know, our community policing projects where we're touching the community in a real broad scale. You know, we hold our National Night Out event, which unfortunately we weren't able to do this year because of the COVID factor and some of those things. So the outreach things are probably where most people will likely see, you know, our officers and you know, our, you know, input into the community. And of course, there's the other side of policing too, the law enforcement aspects as well, whether it's traffic enforcement or handling calls for service and people in crisis. But so there's a lot of different ways that we touch a community. But as we're working through some of these hard issues that we experience in policing right now, and I think the policing, you know, profession is in another serious area of transformation. So we're looking for opportunities to, again, build relationships in our community and build communication. And there's such a broad range of this, but we're always looking for opportunities. And that's, I think, the value of hopefully this format today is that people can give me ideas that I can take back and bring to my community or use in my community, that I can help connect with people, I can help relate to people, I can help work through problems and issues and be just the public servants that we are. So I have a tendency to ramble on, and you can experience my passion when it comes to policing, but really this is a great job. It's a noble profession, but you know, it's also a challenging profession. You're taking a normal person with a good heart and a clear mind and a willingness to help people, and then you're training them, and then you're putting them out into the community, and you put a lot of weight on their shoulders. Some things they're just not necessarily able to handle. In policing, we're great at stabilizing things, but at the same time, we're not licensed mental health professionals. You know, so there's a lot of things that I think we put on the police shoulders that we're not necessarily able to help with, and that's where these partnerships and these things that we're trying to do to bring more resources to people in crisis. You know, domestic violence, which is a common call for service. Police are awesome in stabilizing things and investigating a crime and determining who made a mistake, but we're not marriage counselors. You know, so, you know, there are a lot of different things that need to be worked into this equation to restore, you know, a person or a family and put them on a better path, you know. And I've rambled on a lot, and I just really would like your thoughts and inputs, you know, on what I can do to be a better police chief, what we can do to be better in policing in South Dakota and our communities. And I just would want to tell you that you're not going to offend me. Don't put a filter on what you think about policing, because everybody has a frame of reference, and I want to hear the stories. If you had a negative experience with policing, I want to hear it. If you have something, you're not going to hurt my feelings, in essence, is that's what I'm trying to say. Dave, did I capture that well enough?
Erickson.
Dave, are you there? Maybe he's disconnected, but let's take.
Okay, before we go to that, Dave, I think he just turned on his mic, but I would like to talk a little bit about some of the human factors in, you know, that come into play in being a policeman. I think it's really important, at least it was for me, to like reflect on, you hire a guy or a gal who comes in and ideally they have their head screwed on right and their heart in the right place. That's, you know, that's the best case scenario. We don't always get that, but that's the best, that's what we're looking for, I'm assuming, with that assumption. So what happens, or what could be happening in a person's professional and personal life that ends up making them someone that you really don't want on your force?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lawrence. You know, awesome question. So again, we're hiring normal people, but those people have to be vetted. We have to ensure that those people can think clearly, can interact with people, and that are fair and have integrity. So you have a normal person. That normal person comes to their job with every other normal problem a person has. They're worried about their kids. They're worried about paying their bills. But here in policing, you're coming to a job, and right away at the beginning of your shift, at the briefing, you're being told that, hey, today there's a person out there that you need to be watching for that told us that they have a gun and they want us to kill them. They want to do a suicide by cop. Or they're telling you that at the beginning of your shift, you know, you're looking for this person that strangled his wife last night and he may fight police. So you're preloading your day with a mission that you know has stress and anxiety and doesn't have a certain conclusion. There's a lot of tension and anxiety and fear in policing. So it's a job where you go to work, but all the stresses and the weight of kind of the responsibility of what your job's on your shoulders. So, you know, it's interesting you bring that up. The other day I was talking to the Northern State president, and we're trying to put some things together to bridge gaps with students. And he said, well, you know, I have a suggestion. It's real simple. When your officers drive down the street, can you just tell them to wave at people? Why can't they wave at people? And I explained to him that, you know, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up. And I said, a lot of times we should wave, but a lot of times we're going to a call where there's domestic violence, where somebody just was seriously hurt, or the perpetrator ran, or somebody has a weapon, or somebody is in a bedroom with a knife holding it to their wrist. So, you know, or the officer is, you know, he just got done taking a report, a sexual abuse call of a child. So there's, you know, we're driving and we're in a completely different plane and level, you know, and that's, you bring up a great question, Lawrence, you know, so those calls, we go from call to call to call like that. So 1 minute an officer may have just got done seeing a child abused or dealing with domestic violence call. And the next minute they may get sent to a routine call of a person that had something taken out of their garage, you know, and when that officer arrives at that person's house for that routine call, they notice the officer doesn't seem connected. They notice that the officer may not seem like they care or they're listening very well. So that's some of the struggles we face in policing, is just the nature of our job. And it's hard to explain, but you know, what jobs are out there where your day is preloaded with this stress and tension, and over time, an officer becomes hypervigilant. So, you know, and it's hard to disconnect after you get done with duty. Sometimes you go home and you're still in the sense of always in a detection mode or a fear mode or an anxiety mode. And it takes a while, the physiological process, it takes a while for you to calm down and relax and reset. But over a period of time, officers start to have a different view of the world because they see the worst things in society. They deal with the worst problems. And that can kind of alter and skew, I think, sometimes an officer's lifestyle and personality. And then you see the maladaptive behavior that you see in policing. You know, we're not immune from alcoholism, substance abuse. We're not immune from domestic violence. depression, isolation, those things all happen to us. So it's on us, the chiefs, that we build in these processes to give people the resources to be normal people and recognize these challenges. Peer support, our chaplains program, mental health counseling, you know, suicide prevention, all that becomes involved. So it's a complex job and a challenge in it's really a challenge. So you bring up a great point, Lawrence, on that.
Well, I hope we can. I want to get some questions so people will have a chance to interact with you and bring up some issues that they may have. And Dave, when you can, well, we got 2 days. Erickson, I'm gonna call you Erickson instead of just Dave, because then you won't know who I'm talking about. I hope you'll stay on with us and you can give another point of view, or your point of view also as being a police officer, to help us to understand and connect with the police department. Because from my point of view, I have a co-op the cop agenda. You know, I think that they haven't been part of at least the community that I grew up in, but I think they should be. And I think they should feel like they're one of us instead of somebody coming in to control us. So I'm on a full scale thing of like, how do we make that happen? And how do we reach out? If you're reaching out, I think we should reach out too. So I'm in favor of that. I'll do whatever I can to make that happen.
Amen.
So I want to like put out, anyone has, I think we have enough of, you know, a few enough people we can have a conversation. Anybody have a question that they feel like they want to present to Chief McNeil before he has to split? Okay, Naima.
Chief, here's my hug. You got it virtually.
Right.
You go on, boy. I like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You remind me of Marty Stanwyck down here. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota, Minneapolis, and we did have a thing called Hug a Cop, in the sense that we had addressed, now this is back in the 90s, we had addressed everything that you're talking about in terms of the stress and all of that. And when you're talking about waving, I'm like, yep. And then you went right into what we had addressed. And one of the things that, let me write down what we had. I'll be real brief. Number one, the police officers explained to the community just what you said, because not everybody understands that. There was a timeout. There were more officers hired. There was an extended budget. There were more officers hired so that these guys could just take a time out, and a vacation, so to say. And then with the domestic violence, there was a program that was set up, and this happened to be for Black guys, but other people too. BNAP, Brothers Need a Space, or a place rather, and then SNAP, Sisters Need a Place. Instead of people going to jail for domestic stuff, there was a separate place 24 hours a day where the man could go and the women could go, because women have the shelter, the men have the bar, and everybody, oh man, you ain't gonna let her get away with that. No, you know, you need to, what you a punk? So we had that going on so that the guys could have a spot to settle down. Because when a police officer put them in jail, then they're mad at the cops, so on and so forth. So it was a total, what you're talking about, but it was addressed. More officers, people being able to take that time out and vacation, and the community knew. They knew when their guys, and then the officers did come from the community, or they had relationships with the community. That's why I was smiling when you took them out to McDonald's. That was, you know, they actually went to a place better than McDonald's. That salad was good. And, but they had a relationship with the community, a very definite relationship with the community. And that's when people, Dave, Mr. Erickson, with all the stuff that was going on or is going on in Brookings, the whole underpinning of this group that we have, understand, give some support, be patient. You know, you have an understanding and a demanding. They have a job to do and an understanding. But there has to be that coming together of the community and the police. And everybody has to understand that you guys need a hug. Now, I'm not going up to everybody hug them. I hug Marty, but not with COVID. But there needs to be that. And we have totally lost that. And the other thing was bullying. The police officers in Minneapolis, St. Paul got bullied. The Black officers had hanging nooses on their lockers. And in St. Paul, it was we are not going to tolerate that. And the couple of people that did that were told to let go, be gone. So you got all of that, and and it was successful. It was very successful. You had kids coming up and hugging. How's your day? How's your day been? You know, they go up to the police car and not, hey, what you doing? And it immediately brought some of them back to, hey, it's not just what the different things that you were talking about. It's this little kid. Let me deal with this while we're on that stakeout or what have you. Okay, I just wanted to get that in there because it was so successful. It really was.
Thank you for bringing that up. Phyllis, did you have something you want to say? Okay, anyone else has something that they want to share, ideas?
Yes, Lawrence, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, before you get started, Barb, if you're not talking, besides Dave, because he's going to have to keep talking.
I know, I'm trying to, it's very difficult when we've got a bingo game and all this other stuff going on here.
If you're not talking, turn off your mic.
I'm trying to find a quiet place, and it's a challenge, Lawrence. Okay, what I wanted to first do was to commend the Aberdeen, I'm from Aberdeen, and I'd like to commend the Aberdeen Police Department for their use of social media in communicating with our community on many different subjects, and especially the way they communicated with the way they communicated with the community with our recent Black Lives Matter demonstration. I think it was a stroke of genius that several days before the event, the police department posted a very nice copy of the Bill of Rights and our Constitution on the website, and basically put out into the community, you're free to demonstrate, you have every right to demonstrate, as long as it's peaceful and you don't start, you know, throwing bricks and doing other things. And I think that is a model that many police departments, they encourage people to go to that as long as it was peaceful, and it ended up it was. And they had a very diverse group of people. There were people who were concerned with the Black Lives Matter issue, and there were probably 40 motorcycle people who looked pretty tough, Lawrence, but the group got along really well. And I think that was really a credit to our police department, because they had set the tone by basically speaking to the protesters by saying, here's our Bill of Rights. You're entitled to do this. We're not going to stop you. And I really think that many communities could model that behavior. And that's all I'm going to say right now. I'll mute my mic, Lawrence.
Thank you very much for that.
I can respond and explain further how that all happened to us.
Can I make a comment on that, Lawrence?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you, Barbara, for bringing that up. So the protest was very beneficial. One thing that I learned from that is, you know, there's community members that expressed all over the past years, they had negative experiences with the Aberdeen Police Department. Maybe it was a traffic stop or an interaction, but nonetheless, it was a negative experience. And I thought to myself, I wish at that moment in time, we could have come together with that individual or that family and resolve this, or come to understandings, maybe even agree to disagree, but resolve some of the perceptual issues that kind of underpin this. And so really, in my mind, that's an opportunity now to create listening sessions or advisory groups to the police department. So there's some type of a community conduit where people feel that maybe, you know, that interaction they had with the police officer wasn't the best, or maybe they weren't heard in the best way, or maybe they didn't get the best service. in an investigation that they ask for, or maybe just a feeling that they get in general. But that's really the outreach that I'm trying to create now, and the learning value of hearing the individual speak about their negative experiences with the Aberdeen Police Department. How can I become closer to the community and build bridges and pathways through individuals like yourself that maybe can help us as police chiefs hear that, mediate that, and bring those people to the table, so at least we can start a conversation and work through some of those issues. That's one project I have, and I got lots of ideas, but I'd also be interested from this group and this panel on where formats lie that normally you don't see police officers. Are there opportunities out there in the community where we could be more involved, or should we seek people in our community, or just get your thought process on this whole idea?
So does anyone out there, I'm looking for ideas too, and I think this is a good opportunity. Anything that you think that will help? Eduardo.
Yes, thank you. First of all, Mr. McNeil, I really appreciate hearing more about what it's like to be a police officer. I really didn't have much perspective on what that was like. I can see with much more clarity now, the kind of the challenge of it. I'm a big proponent of human connection, and it's something that I pay a lot of attention to in my own life. And I've started I'm a patent lawyer here in Minneapolis, and I've had very few interactions with the police. And most recently, those interactions with me, encountering them on the streets, inviting them into having 60 seconds worth of eye contact with me. Because I am a deep believer that many of the inhumanities that we've seen perpetrated in the press and so forth, I think they would not have happened if there was a moment of one or both parties in the interaction appreciating the humanity of the other. And I see a lot of times, even on the streets, when I've encountered police officers, they're wearing the big shiny sunglasses. And I'm really clear on the fact now that when you engage someone with sunglasses, you do not have a real human connection with them. And so I have a curiosity about what the training is in the typical training. I know you can't speak to all training that police officers go through around that basic fundamental human interaction and how important eye contact is to it. Can you speak to that? And maybe I'll have a follow-up question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, when we train new officers, they come here with a lot of life experiences, a lot of job experiences, but right away, you know, there's certain operational things that are pretty mundane that officers are trained with, but the core of training for police officers is really centered around communication and problem solving and analyzing things, de-escalation. That's really the emphasis now, is how to effectively stabilize things, understand someone, and then, you know, put a solution together that works. So, you know, communication is imperative. There isn't anything, you know, and we stress this to our officers, that if you, in tense and uncertain situations, if you can get that person to talk to you, acknowledge you, you're going to succeed. You know, there are times, you know, obviously that you have to respond to resistance, but many times there are opportunities where you can create yourself some space, time, and distance and resolve things. So, but communication is so important. Officers are trained on how to effectively interview somebody, how to listen, how to be empathetic, you know, just a lot of different counseling techniques, mirroring, you know, feedback, different things like that go into the officer's training. And then again, how to help people work through particular problems. So, but there are inherent barriers or walls that police officers have to overcome. A patrol car is one. You know, everybody's seen a patrol car in their life. The patrol car drives by, the officer may wear sunglasses. That's a barrier. You know, and a lot of times, you know, there's a reason that we have the car. That's obvious, but there are many other opportunities that you will see where officers understand that the barrier that they're on is something that they need to disembark from. And I'll point to a story I just saw last night on Keloland News, where an motorcycle officer, was patrolling a particular park. That there's a lot of, you know, individuals in there that are struggling, a lot of homeless individuals and transient people. But this officer, that was his quadrant or area. So he took pride in that area. And he saw some kids playing basketball on the basketball court. So we stopped the motorcycle, got off the motorcycle, and just started playing basketball with him. And he didn't stage this. This wasn't something he decided for a media event or pat himself on the back or try to gain something for the department. A good citizen saw this, and one thing led to another, and somehow somebody called the news and said, hey, look, this officer's off his motorcycle. He's actually a human. He's playing basketball with these kids, and he's going to come back the next couple of days and do that. So, you know, there's, to answer your question in a broad sense, really the core of policing is how to communicate, how to, you know, empathize with people, you know, and ultimately understand what it is that this in a successful way and how to help somebody, you know, navigate a problem or situation. And then there's the other human side that we know we have to be seen as the people that we are. You know, we get out of our cars, we leave our offices, we take our sunglasses off, and we try to engage people. We interact as you know, as much as we can. So if a police department is doing those things, so in the Sioux Falls Police Department, if you saw that that officer was empowered to get off his motorcycle and walk around and play basketball with kids, that's a well-functioning police department. That means that police department has some leadership that allows their officers to make these judgmental decisions. Somebody's not micromanaging them and telling them, hey, you can't get off that motorcycle. You got to go write 9 stop sign tickets. No, this officer was empowered to actually spend a half an hour in the park with these kids. That's huge. You know, so I think that's one of the things that we kind of do right. But that's an awesome question that you have. And I'd love to talk more about training because there's many other opportunities in training. And again, we're kind of in a transformative state here with police training. And a lot of training is centered around intervention now. So kind of going to the Minneapolis example, a lot of times officers become drawn into a situation. It's adrenaline filled. You know, they focus on the capture of the person. There's a, you know, everything, their decision-making process dissipates because it's tense and uncertain and the anxiety. But what we're really training and focusing our officers now is that the other officers around the situation intervene. So if we see that an officer is starting to use inappropriate language, or the officer seems hypersensitive to something where they should be calming down, or they're causing more of a situation, or they're applying a force application that's not appropriate, the other officers need to intervene and stop this from happening. And so that's something we're really focusing on with training as well right now.
Wow, thank you for that. I've noticed a lot, and even as a parent, I see a police officer's work sometimes is analogous to a parent when, and if all you do is sort of pick at your kids for the places where they go off track, then if you walk into the room, boy, they just tense up because they're automatically assuming that they're doing something that's quote unquote wrong.
Yeah.
And I think there's certainly some of that in our culture in terms of when you see a police officer on the scene, you just like seize up because you think that you just transgressed in some way. I would add one thing. I think there's a difference between connection and communication that's not very widely spoken of in our culture. And the way that I've been thinking about it, and I've started even like training people around it, is that if you think about a paper cup telephone, right, 2 paper cups and the string between them, you know, you need to have that connection before you can start communicating across that line. And I think that that's sometimes not very well understood. So people start blaring out or speaking to each other and they haven't even formed that connection, which says that, hey, I see you as a human. I see you as a peer. You're safe with me. All that stuff that gets spoken in those milliseconds of the formation of that connection. So I'm planting that seed with you, Mr. McNeil, because I know that I can feel that your heart is in what your work is. And I think that's a very vital distinction that most people that I've even begun to talk about this with really don't have clear language around. And I hope that it's something that filters into our, I hope it's something that filters into all our human interactions, but particularly between these more tense interactions with law enforcement officers and the public.
Yeah, thank you for that thought. That's a great statement. You know, what I try to tell officers is, you know, law enforcement is built on a customer service model, and people would say, well, that customer service, what are you talking about? But really it is. And I tell officers that if you can try to imagine that every call you go on, envision that, you know, how would you want that police officer to treat your mother, your sister, your brother, your father, you know? So if you can humanize, you know, people that way and understand that it's somebody's sister, somebody's brother, mother, whoever, you know, that you enter that engagement with that mindset, and that goes a long ways. And I think you'll listen a little bit better, you'll try a little bit more, you'll try harder. And again, it's that concept that you're talking about is, you know, hey, we're all human beings and we're all trying to do the best we can. But, you know, going to what Lawrence talked about too is the rigors of policing, because over time, a lot of police experiences that you're dealing with the worst in human the condition, you have a tendency to label people. And the law enforcement process, you know, you're a sentinel. You're always looking for danger or something. But in the Emotional Survival series by Gil Martin, he talked about how law enforcement officers, they can't sometimes unplug that either. So for instance, you and I are walking down the mall and we're shopping and we see a scoutmaster walk by. You might look at that scoutmaster as, hey, look at that guy. He's really helping those kids. He's really doing well. He's really a good person. The police officer is wired to think, well, I wonder what that scoutmaster is doing. I wonder if he's a pedophile. I wonder if he's harming kids. So, you know, it's this constant rigor that we're in, and we have to always go back to being a basic human being and trying to uncouple some of these negative experiences. And there's a lot of stuff we could talk about down the road with that. But again, getting back to how officers kind of are just constantly loaded with this stress and this perception. And that's why these community policing programs are so important, because you're plugging officers into positive things with the community and giving them opportunities to be seen as a resource, and they're doing positive things. So that officer getting off his motorcycle, interacting with those kids playing basketball, you know, that is so profound, and that keeps that officer, and it puts him in such a good place. It keeps his mental health, you know, in very good stability. There's just so many good things to talk about that. So, hey, listen, you know, I probably need to be going to my next meeting. Dave Erickson, are you there? Can you hear me, Dave?
Yeah, I can, Dave, and unfortunately, I have an 11 o'clock engagement too, so.
Okay. I'm going to take a couple quick questions. I want to give people, I see a couple hands up. Please give me your idea or statement. And one thing I would ask from this group is, after Dave and I leave, could you guys talk about things that you think we need to understand as police chiefs, the things that we can do better, and opportunities in our community? And I would really love to come back to this panel again and talk more. And if we could keep this going, I would greatly appreciate that, and invite more others. So there's a few people that have their hands up. Please, Lawrence, you decide who you want to speak.
Well, I saw Sheila. Go ahead, Sheila.
Have to turn my mic.
Now you turned it off again. You turn your mic off again, Sheila. There you go. Now you're on.
Okie doke. A couple of years ago, we had a meet and greet with the Somali people, the Aberdeen Area Diversity Coalition. And first we asked them if that's something they'd like to do. Then we partnered with the police department and with the KOLE library. And we were hoping a couple hundred would show up. 454 came. There was music and dancing and henna painting. The police department brought their whole setup to encourage people to apply for jobs. But immediately when we arrived, there was some tension of some sort, because the Somali men had some kind of a confrontation with the police department. Sergeant Thoreau was here at that time. So the very first thing they did was get together. And the Somali men came together, and the guys from the police department, there were about a half a dozen of them, came together. And like Chief McNeil says, they were at the table, so to speak, and right there, they ironed it out. They were able to communicate face-to-face with one another and to listen to one another, and with the help of interpreters, to understand what had really happened and to clear up the misunderstanding. There's nothing like person to person. This is what we have to do, and feed people. We fed people well. But the problem with the Diversity Coalition right now, because the Somali people would like to do this again, and there are others that might like to do this, but we're treading water because of COVID. We cannot get together. But I want to say, to commend the Aberdeen Police Department for their interaction that day and their constant support of the Diversity Coalition. So I just want to say thank you, and again point out the importance of getting people together when you have difficulties. This is like if you're a preacher and they're out in the parking lot talking about you after the sermon. Why won't they come in and talk to you? And it's exactly what the police department needs as well. Instead of harboring those things, get together. And our Dave McNeil is open to talking to people, and I appreciate that. I quit. I also have to leave early. Sorry, have another engagement.
Good. Well, I'm very happy that Dave brought up that we're going to continue this conversation, even though the 2 days have another party that they have to go to. But I want to continue this conversation. We're recording it, so Dave, you can actually listen to the whole thing later. We can try to get you a copy of it so you can hear people's comments or things that they think. And as we're talking, as this conversation is going, please be thinking about, well, what kind of things do you think would help us to make that connection with police departments, wherever they are, because other people may see this too and get some ideas to suggest to their police departments wherever they are. And I like Eduardo's point that he made about the sunglasses, because that's one of those kind of barriers that says two things. One, you disconnected from the people, but also it serves a certain amount of fear, because you are communicating fear by having that on, because you're saying, I'm afraid that if you know what I'm really thinking, that, that it'll give you some kind of edge, or you won't like me or whatever. And I have to hide behind this thing so you can't see me. And I can project that, there's something mysterious about me, when actually everybody else is seeing through you, and you're the only one who's thinking that you're somehow hidden. So I think that's his point about the sunglasses is one that's that really struck me. Yeah. Anyone else has some last minute things that they would like to suggest to?
I do.
Yes. Who is that? Oh, Deb.
Deb. I just have to jump in here and put a plug in for the Citizens First Responder Academy in Brookings. I don't know if this is a statewide thing or just Brookings does it, but Carolyn and I both went through it 2 years ago, and it was amazing. I mean, you go through what the police are doing, what the first responders, the EMTs, the fire department, and you get up close and personal with these individuals. They become human beings. We know that they're people. They have families and they have goals and dreams, and they work really hard, and they have a heart. They have a heart for service and for the people that they serve. And I think, honestly, that program should be everywhere, and that everybody should be encouraged to go through it, because it really gives you an idea of what it's all about. And I congratulate you, Chief Erickson, for even having that program happen, because it is wonderful. And I know Carolyn and I both really, really appreciated it. So I don't know if it's around the rest of the state or not, but if it isn't, it really should be.
Betty, you had something you want to say?
Yes. Good morning, Dave. Thank you for being a part of this. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you. When you said hypervigilance, referring to what a police officer becomes and is and has to be, that term struck me as coinciding with particularly the way Black men are raised in our society, of necessity to be hypervigilant. And I think probably in South Dakota, a lot of Native children with a different affect, but they grow to expect the worst, and so they hunker down and avoid. Those are not good positions to start a relationship from. And because of the hypervigilance, if you have a man who's hypervigilant for his life on both sides of a confrontation or an encounter, that's not a good place to be. So I really value the fact that you recognize that, and I just wanted to mention that it may be a factor for a lot of things that we deal with. So
that's a very excellent point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else has some ideas that they would like to share with the chief?
Well, thank you, everyone. I greatly appreciate it. If I could reconvene with you, at another time, I would greatly appreciate that. I want to thank Lawrence. I want to thank everybody today. Thank you so much for your time. It's valuable to us, and we do appreciate it. So.
Okay, we'll be looking forward to it. We will try to make this happen again.
More hugs.
You bet. Dave, did you have anything that you wanted? Erickson, did you have anything you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, Dave did an outstanding job of just kind of explaining some of the aspects of police work. And I guess I would just add to that a little bit that that's one of the things that I am striving here at the Brookings Police Department is that community interaction. Fortunately, I was able to steal Sergeant Thoreau from Aberdeen. He now works here in Brookings, and he's doing a fantastic job. And we're really ramping up our community outreach team, and he's part of that. And that getting off the motorcycle, getting out of the patrol car, doing those positive interactions. A couple of things. I tell my officers, I said, with all the negative things that we encounter every day, you need to have that injection of positivity in your life, whether that's while you're on the clock or when you're off the clock, something that counteracts some of all that negativity, so you can keep your head level and on straight, because do have that hypervigilance, and then when you come home, it's almost like you shut down into a coma almost, and it affects your family life and everything. So that's there's a lot of biological and mental things that go on, and so by interjecting those positive things in your life, and so we're trying here to not just have a philosophy of community policing, but just make it our culture here. And I forget who mentioned it, but COVID sure has been a real pain in the butt when it comes to trying to implement some of these programs and get together with groups and such, which is what we really want to do and expand on. So yeah, communication, that's the key here. Communicating between law enforcement and our community. And one of the gentlemen said that it does go both ways, and so it's just, I look at that as just like a marriage, just like a relationship, where if you don't talk to each other, what do you expect is going to happen? It's going to fail. There's going to be failures. There's going to be issues, and so there are a lot of things about police officers that some citizens don't understand, some of the things that go through. And likewise, there are things that our officers maybe don't understand about a culture segment, or like here in Brookings, we have the university here, so we have a very large foreign student population. And I got the opportunity to visit with that group a couple of times here in the recent past, and just understanding their fear coming into it of law enforcement that they bring from their home countries, and how different law enforcement is there as it is compared to here. So having those understandings helps us be better equipped in going into a situation if we have to respond to a call for service with an individual from a foreign country. So like I said, communication both ways is key. It is what we're focused on here, and we're just hoping for the opportunities to expand on that.
One of the things we missed, Dave, is we didn't get an introduction from you. So can you tell
Sure.
us a little bit about yourself? Because otherwise we're talking to this voice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my camera isn't working on my laptop right now, so all you get is my voice. So maybe that's probably not a bad thing, but No, yeah, I've been with the Brookings Police Department for 22 years here, and took over as chief in 2017. So it's been about 3 years here next month. But was served in the Army before that. So I've had a life of service and to our country and to our community here. And I got a great group of people here. But one thing is I got this great group of people, but everything that's going on is having a negative effect on some. I got an officer that's just been here 2 years, great officer, just the kindest person you'd ever meet, and loves working here, but he's going to resign, you know, because he and his fiance are like, we're not sure if this is the right career, you know, for me, because of everything that's going on nationally. And so it's difficult for me to see somebody that you know, that's the kind of cop that I want on the department. That's the guy that I love having here. And I'm losing guys like that because of just all the negativity that's going on. So it's we got to focus on what we're doing here in Brookings. I think we got great community support, and we love our community as well. And my focus moving forward here, like I said, is to really expand on our community outreach team and the efforts that we're doing there.
You know, that you go ahead, Naima.
Because he's got to leave. Dave, Naima here. Oh, you can see me.
Yes, I can.
How are you?
I'm great.
The thing that was discussed, that Deb discussed, all of that. Would you be able to make that? Well, at least tell me, because you know I got a big mouth and I can tell people, so that people will know what's going on. You know, the group that we have, being able to let people understand what's going on. And personally, if there's anything I can do to help with that officer, I'm good at hugs, you know, even virtual. And I'm sorry to hear that, but you know, if there's anything that can be done, and have the reach out, even out to Elkton, that'd be excellent, because I know you and Marty have a lot of different things, but sometimes we don't know about it.
Right. Yeah. You know, and this community has been fantastic. There was a couple of weeks there, it was every day we were getting pizza, or we were getting donuts, or we were getting something from the community, a bouquet of flowers, you know, just people saying thank you. And that's great, and that's fantastic. It's definitely those things that take you from a point where you're like, oh, do I want to keep doing this? To, yeah, I do. Because there are people that appreciate what we do, and we appreciate those citizens.
You know, I think it gets back to something we were talking about before. It's like it's commendable and very important that police are doing outreach. And now I think we have to kind of spread it around, kind of like Naima was saying, to like, how does the community reach back, you know, and maybe we often don't do that because we're not aware of a forum in which we can do it. In other words, I may say, hey, look, I'd like to reach out to police department, but, you know, where would that happen? You know, how do you start that? Fortunately for me, somebody had already done the homework. People like Sheila had already, you know, gotten that together by having a diversity committee and making those connections. And fortunately, there was somebody like Dave on the other end of that made it possible. But for most people, even if the opportunity is there, they don't know it. So I think it's up to us to like kind of spread that word. And like Naima was saying, we need to start doing some hugs. You know, we need to start co-opting the cops. You know, they're supposed to be on our side. They're not supposed to be these aliens that come up with their sunglasses and helmets on that we see us, you know, like, you know, from another planet or something invading our space. They're supposed to be about us, but we have, to me, I think we need to start to make that happen too, and make them feel like, hey, we feel like we should own you, you know, not those guys down with the big butts who push around all the other things. You're ours. You're our brothers and sisters. Y'all supposed to be with us, you know.
Right. Yeah, and just like what Dave said, I mean, he's very open. We're very open here too. I mean, if anybody in our community has an idea of a way to connect, just give me a call, you know, and we'll get on it, you know, because it's like my leadership style here is I don't have all the answers. I'm not a subject matter expert in everything, and that's why I rely upon so many of my staff to bring ideas to the table and everything. And so just like the staff here, our community needs to bring those ideas, because we might get presented something that we hadn't thought of. We might say, oh, wow, that's a great idea. Let's do it. You know, so I would encourage that as well.
Phyllis, you had something you wanted to say?
Yes, I know that. I think Dave said that he needs to get to a meeting, so I'll keep this short. Thank you for your service. I'm just wondering if after someone has an interaction with the police of an official nature, whether there is any kind of follow-up. I know that Chief McNeil was talking about how this is customer service. You know, well, there's nothing that I don't buy that I don't get a follow-up customer service, you know, rate this interaction or something. And I'm not saying doing something automated like that, but is there any kind of normalized procedure for reconnecting with people to see, you know, what was the quality of the interaction? How could we improve things or do things differently? That kind of thing. Thank you for fielding my question.
Sure. Yeah, you know, we have something that's close. So if somebody calls in and reports being a victim of a crime, let's just say they had something stolen, and so the officer will take that initial report, and then within a few days, that officer will reach out to that citizen and ask, hey, has anything else developed? Do you have any other information for me and everything? And just reconnecting with them in that regard. But as far as a survey or anything like that, it's actually something that we're talking about implementing, putting out there, saying if you had police services and you want to fill out this survey, it's there for you. We don't have it yet, but we're working on it.
Well, I'm also wondering though, not just people who have been, say, victimized by crime, but those who have been stopped or accused of or questioned by any kind of interaction. And if you rely on a survey, for example, you know, that's going to cut down the response as if somebody were to reach out, and it also is not the same kind of connection as a human being reaching. Right. So anyway.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think it's definitely a good idea. Difficult to implement just because of manpower and time, because like Dave alluded to, quite often we're going call to call and dealing with things, and so having somebody there then in the background to make those follow-up contacts could be challenging.
I can understand that. It might be best if something like that could be created where the community was taking the responsibility to do that, rather than the police having to do it. So there's more of a neutral, perhaps, part
sure.
of this, and then the burden of the manpower wouldn't be on anybody.
Great idea.
That's the Nicole that's on there for you, Dave. That's something that came up, and it seems to be working. It was working in Minneapolis, and there are different kinds of ways of putting it together.
Sure.
Yeah, there are good people around, like you're saying, that are willing to work with you on something like that. Because what she's saying, she's right, spot on. There needs to be that face-to-face human connection.
Right.
I could just add to what Phyllis was saying about like kind of following up. And unfortunately, my son had an experience with an officer that showed up at our house one day, wanted to talk to my son, put him in a car, talked to him, looked at his shoes, took pictures of his shoes, measured his shoes, told him that he was a suspect for vandalizing somebody's car in another town.
Whoa.
The officer left, and we never heard from the officer or any other officer again, ever. And it comes to find out that this girl chose my son's name out of a hat and tried to accuse him, and it was later found out that she lied. But to this day, and this was years ago, we've never heard any follow-up. And so my son is kind of like, geez, this officer just showed up at my house, accused me of vandalizing somebody's car, took pictures of my shoes, measured them, made me feel like a criminal, and I've never heard from him again. Like, there should have been, in my mind, some sort of follow-up to say, hey, sorry, we had the wrong person. Or, hey, sorry, there was a misunderstanding or a mistake, you know, you're good to go. You didn't do anything wrong. You know, sorry for the confusion. Because as, you know, a 20-something-year-old, my son has a lot of anxiety when police are around, just in general. And I think part of it stems from things like that happen. And so when Phyllis talks about follow-up, I think that would be huge, you know, to have some sort of follow-up for different kinds of things like that too. Now, I'd like to think that that doesn't happen every day, but I'm sure that he's not the only person that that's ever happened to. Like, hey, you were accused of something, it come to find out you didn't do it. Where's the police coming back and saying, hey, we made a mistake. You know, I'm human, I made a mistake, I apologize for putting you in my car in front of your entire neighborhood when you didn't do anything wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that follow-up is very important with everybody too.
Right, yeah, that's a great example.
Yep.
Anyone else have something to add or to, you know, suggestions to make that they think that, you know, would help relationships between the community and the police department?
Is there anything we can do to work with you on this? Because I agree, I think this is so important to develop these relationships, and just these people that are talking right now, now they know you, you know, and they probably didn't, some of them probably didn't know you before, and they know where you're coming from, and they know where Chief McNeil is coming from, and how difficult your job is. And at the Humanities Council, we work on human relations. So if there's anything that you could see that, like any way we could help you, or, you know, work on programs together or anything, we just encourage you to let us know.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think there definitely could be some partnership opportunities with you guys for sure. You know, as we're ramping up our community outreach team, that definitely could be a resource for each other. I think, you know, an opportunity for our officers to learn more about your organization. What do you offer to the community? What do you offer to our state and everything? What is your function and everything? And then learning that, and then putting together our two teams to work for common goals. I think that's definitely a possibility.
Dave, this is Deb. One quick question. Do you have anybody from the community on your community outreach team?
No, we do not. It was designed to so it's starting off small. We didn't want to start off way too big and get and then lose traction or anything like that. So we've got just a small handful of officers that are on this committee. That doesn't mean that it's limited to those officers to do some of the activities or interactions. They are just kind of organizers, if you will. But my philosophy and my encouragement to everybody is that when they come up with an activity, and I want other officers there participating with that activity outside of this core group. They're, like I said, the organizers for the department right now. Looking at the future of expanding to more people being on this committee, to like you're mentioning, Deb, possible citizen involvement. That's definitely on the table. Right now, we're just starting it, so I want to keep it a little small and get some successes under our belt, and then expand from there.
You know, as you're talking, it occurs to me that it doesn't have to be an either or; it can be a both and. In the sense that if there are people who are interested in working with police departments, they can get together, and then even in the informal way, just kind of know where you guys are coming from.
Oh, exactly. Yep.
Then those people in that community can say, they can start to be creative about, even just having an event, like making a party, like
yeah, well, we had one that we were going to hold, and then it was just like, Kyle, we're going to have a whole bunch of people in one spot. Yeah, certain ordinances about COVID right now going on. It's just, well, we better not, and so it's really, really disappointing when we come up with some of these great ideas, but we're unable to implement them because of this reason or that reason. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's one of the goals of this team, is to reach out and build those partnerships with different groups or individuals that can bring us ideas and say, hey, I'm part of this organization. What can we do together? So,
well, and I like to remind people that if we don't defeat the coronas, then all this is academic, so assuming that we're actually going to defeat them at some point, we can use this time to plan, we can use this time to run what if scenarios. We can still call each other on the phone. We can still have really small meetings, so we don't have to give up, we can keep moving the puck forward,
Yeah, I mean, just the ideas that I've heard from your participants today are valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, can you hold any of your events online like this?
Well, that's certainly a possibility. I don't know how large of a group you can do online. I think I've been part of a lot of Zoom meetings here lately, and it seems like when you get a number that's too big, it becomes problematic. But maybe something that's just like a Facebook Live type thing. Is that what you're suggesting?
There are a number of ways and iterations of this, and the basic is up to 50. Technically, realistically, what happens is after about 30, it kind of breaks down because it's too hard to keep track of who's talking stuff. So, then as a practical matter, you're probably not going to have 150 people show up. So if you
probably not.
If you get 20 people, which is doable, if you get 20 people to have a meaningful conversation, that's a big deal. Probably more than you were going to accomplish otherwise. Right. Then the other thing is now you can start to bring in that creativity of okay, we can't be with each other. Mostly we're meeting each other as a face on a screen. But what could we, what kind of things could we do? One-on-one or in a park or something like that. You can still have a meeting at a park bench with everybody having masks on, and with outside in the UV, you're probably as safe as you're ever going to be. So
right. And we have some facility here, and our training room is large enough that we can meet with 10 to 12 people and still be able to spread out and keep distancing and everything. But outside is great too.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, we can at least start to meet, know who each other are, know our sentiments, and start to spread this kind of ideas around in our communities so that we can say, hey, you know, look, if you want to, like, if your group thinks that you have been wrong, or there's a person who thinks you've been wrong, I know a guy I can talk to if you think that's really, you know, that you got disrespected or something like that. And then we, you know, those two people can have even a Zoom conference to like work something out to say, hey, what happened here, you know?
Right. Yep.
So we can work around the COVIDs.
Yep. The biggest thing is to remain open-minded to possibilities. I mean, I think what we're facing today requires us to step out of the box, to step out of what we're used to, and to interact in different ways than what maybe I've been taught for my whole career, you know, is how a police officer should interact, you know. So there's definitely, you know, difficult times for a lot of members of our society, but I think it's also a time that presents a lot of great opportunity too.
Excellent.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to circle back to the use of social media and Zoom meetings and share with the group that I have been actually in Zoom meetings that have up to 400 participants out of Washington. And the way they do it is everybody's microphone is muted, and you just basically have a guest speaker who you submit questions in advance. And that way you can have a great number of people. And while you don't really have interaction with the group, it certainly is an option if, you know, you want to communicate and have some feedback.
Yes.
So I just want to share that technology is wonderful, and we're just beginning to explore the ways that we can communicate with each other through it.
Exactly. And we have, those are technically called webinars, but they work. People have even up to 1,000 people that I know about in those kind of meetings. So yes, they can work. So there's not a limitation, but it becomes a different kind of meeting. It's not as interactive. And that, I think, is the value of these smaller meetings, is that you have the interactivity where people can go back and forth. But that said, your point is very well taken, Barb, that you know, like, we can work around the technical difficulties and do something useful. Well, we've had a wonderful discussion today. I would like to thank everyone for showing up and for being a part of this conversation. I hope we will keep this conversation going. We will invite Dave back again, and we'll try to get to 2 days on. You guys should have like a show of your own, you know.
Yeah, I'm just happy that
2 days that's got a ring to it, man.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of used to it in my family. I have 2 brother-in-laws that are named Dave, and then my son just named our first grandson David second. So we got 4 Davids in the family.
And I hear you got your own statue in Sioux Falls too now.
And no, I caught grief for that growing up. That's where I grew up, was Sioux Falls. So.
Well, thank you very much for showing up, everybody. And just to remind you that we do this every Thursday, or at least that's what we're planning, every Thursday, same time, same station. And we invite you to get on the mailing list. And so that if something does change or there's some new thing, you'll always be advised of it, and you'll have a chance to maybe think about some questions you have for whatever the topic is at that time. Thank you again, and over and out. Thank you.
Is there a place to get the recording of this so people can see what happened? The ones
we don't have a place yet, but it is recorded, and so we will have a discussion about how to make that available and whether or not we're going to put it up. But yes, it is recorded, and we will try to make that happen.
Because Fedora wasn't able to get here today.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy this
Okay.
a lot.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a beautiful day.
Bye.
Bye.